When I was a child, I hated Easter. I hated Easter. Now you have to understand, all the childhood trappings of Easter were lost on me. I'm a country girl. I was raised on a farm. Actually, it was a chicken farm. We raised rabbits. So to talk to me about bunnies at Easter, I cleaned their cages. And baby chicks, little peepers would come into our farm by the thousands. I used to swim in a sea of baby chickens. And every morning, our parents would send us out to the backyard to gather about 5,000 eggs. So on Easter, for someone to send me out into the backyard to gather the eggs and then have the audacity to hide them in the front yard was cruel and unusual punishment. As a child, I hated Easter. And I've got to be honest with you. It really didn't get much better when I went to church. I loved Jesus. I loved Jesus. But I hated this cross. I hated this cross. Because the preacher would stand on a morning just like this and he would say, "Your sins put Jesus on a cross." And I'm sitting there thinking, what did I do? Did I eat too many cookies? Did I talk back to my mother? What did I do to put Jesus on the cross? I was told that I was sinful. I was worthless. I was the dust of the earth, and I was like a worm. Anybody else?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'll be honest with you, I was told that a loving God had hung his own child on the cross. A loving God. It sounded like child abuse to me. And to be perfectly honest, if God gave his only son to save me, then couldn't he have come up with a better plan? The God that could make butterfly wings and put rainbows in the sky couldn't come up with a better plan than that. I was a kid. I could have thought of other ways. And the tomb. Did any of you ever have trouble with this tomb? I would sit on Sunday sunrise services, and the minister would say, "And they laid him in the grave on a Friday afternoon. And here on this Sabbath Sunday morning, 3 days after he laid in the tomb, he arose." And I'm sitting there thinking, Friday night to Saturday night, 24 hours, 30. How did he get 3 days from Friday night to Sunday morning? How did that work? So the tomb confused me, and the cross angered me. What I did not know then, which I know now, I just needed to be in a unity church. I just needed to be in unity, Dr. Tynes. Because here in unity, we believe that there is one presence, there is one power, and that presence and that power is good. We believe that we came from original blessing. We did not come from original sin. Therefore, if we are not sinners, then we do not need salvation. what is the power of this cross? And what is the meaning of this tomb for unity? And on this Easter Sunday morning, this Easter service has three parts. There is the cross, there's the tomb, and there's a veil. And in unity, we cannot understand the power of the cross or the power of the tomb until we understand this veil. This is the veil into the Holy of Holies. It resides in the temple in Jerusalem. Let me set the scene for you. In the Jewish temple in Jerusalem, the temple is set up in three courts. In the outer court are the Gentiles. Anybody who's not Jewish can come to the outer court. It's the only place you can go to. In the inner court, it was only for those who were circumcised. Modern day translation, no women need apply. Outer court, everybody. Inner court, only circumcised Jewish males. But then there is the Holy of Holies. What the priesthood did at the time of Jesus is that they wanted to erect an earthly home for God. They knew that God sat on a heavenly throne, and so here behind the Holy of Holies, here in the Holy of Holies, behind the veil, they had an earthly throne. God sits behind the veil. God lives in the Holy of Holies. God is here according to the Jewish belief. God dwells here in the Holy of Holies. Only here. Because the God of all creation was only the God of the Jewish people. He wasn't the God of everybody else. He wasn't the God of the Gentiles or anyone else who might have lived then. He was the God of the Jewish people, and he lived right here. God's behind the veil. Only place you can meet God is behind the veil. Except for one time a year. On the Day of Atonement, the high priest would come. The high priest would come to go behind the veil. Only the high priest could go behind the veil. He would go there to talk to God, to commune with God. It's the only place one could be with God. And only the high priest could go. You see, because the high priest was from the tribe of Levi. There are 12 tribes in Jerusalem, but only the Levi tribe had priests. It's kind of like the monarchy. You had to be born into it. So the high priest would come on the Day of Atonement, and he would purify himself. Now, no, he's going into the presence of God. If he has one impure thought or one impure action, he will die. Because no impurities can come before God. He wants to make sure this is right. And when he feels that he is pure enough and holy enough, he picks up the sacrificial lamb. And the lamb has to be as pure as he is. There can be no blemishes. It can't have any broken bones. No scars. It has to be a pure lamb just like him. Because the high priest is taking this lamb into the Holy of Holies to sacrifice it. The lamb will be sacrificed for the sins of the Jewish people. So into the Holy of Holies he goes. And there he sacrifices the lamb for the sins of the Jewish people. Only the high priest, once a year, can talk with God. Only person allowed. Only time, once a year. We'll see if he's pure enough. Oh, thank goodness, I was worried for a second. Thank you, sir. You see, in the time of Christ, when he walked on the face of the earth, there was only a God for the Jewish people. That's all. Just for him. And there was no individual way for you to see God. There was no sense of an individual, personal expression of God. Only the priest, only the priesthood. You could not talk to God. Only the priest, once a year. And there was another belief during that time. There was a belief that, well, it was an argument, really, between anybody ever remember the Pharisees and the Sadducees growing up? Do you know part of their conflict between these two religious groups? One believed that, maybe there is life after death. Maybe. They're not sure, but maybe. The Pharisees believed that there could be life after death. The Sadducees said, no, absolutely not. When you're dead, you're dead. That's it. There is no life after death. Pharisees were saying maybe. Sadducees were saying, nope, dead. When you die, that's it. So Jesus arrives now in this state of consciousness. He arrives in a place where they're arguing about where and how to get to God, how to get to life after death. And they're arguing about who gets to see God and who doesn't. So here we have a situation where Jesus comes now. And what is Jesus preaching? What is Jesus saying? Jesus is saying, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the light. Jesus is saying, if you've seen me, you have seen the Father. When you have seen me, you have seen the Father, because the Father and I are one. The Father and I are one. And the priests are saying, no, that can't happen. Don't you know? God lives here. This is the only place God is. You can't be saying that you and the Father are one, because God is only here. Heresy. You cannot. What do you mean? If they see you, they see the Father. God lives here with the Jewish people behind the veil. And Jesus would say to his disciples and to his followers, and when you pray, you say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And the priesthood would yell, No. The priest, the high priest, only once a year can go in and see God and pray to God. You can't pray to God. You don't have any right to speak to God. God lives here. God is behind this veil. And only the high priest once a year speaks to God. What do you mean teaching somebody how to pray? And Jesus would say, I go to prepare a place for you. He would talk about the rooms and the mansions. He would talk about who sits on the right and left hand of God in the heavenly kingdom. He would talk about life after this one. Oh, and the Sadducees would jump up and down and scream. No, when you're dead, you're dead. There is no life after this one. So now it is in this consciousness that Jesus came into the world. That only God is only living behind a veil. There's no way to pray. There's no individual expression. You don't get to talk to Him. And there is nothing after this, people. When you're gone, you're gone. That's the consciousness that Jesus came into the world. You can see why they had to kill Him. Does it not make perfect sense why He had to die? There's no way we could let somebody run around when we know the truth. And the only truth. Oh my goodness. And so, they hung Him on the cross. They hung Him on the cross. And I love the way that the Dr. Reverends Bill and Cher Holton wrote it in a piece I read recently on Easter, the spiritual perspective. They were talking about how when Jesus was on the cross, His last words were translated into our King James Version to say, my God, why hast Thou forsaken me? Why hast Thou forsaken me? But when the biblical scholars went back, because the Bible, our King James Version, came from the Greek translation of the words. And when they went back to the Aramaic translations, Jesus, who spoke Aramaic, said, my God, for this purpose I have come. My God, for this purpose I have come. And if He was coming for a purpose, what was it? If Jesus, and I love the way Charles Fillmore says it, one of our co-founders. Charles Fillmore says that Jesus was our elder brother and our way shower. Well, if Jesus is our way shower, what way was He trying to show us? What is the way? The way starts now. When Jesus said, my God, for this purpose I have come, He breathed His last breath, and the skies went dark. The darkness fell upon the earth, and the earth began to quake. Thunder roared. The earth quaked. Rocks were rent. Stones. The earth shook. And in the Holy of Holies, in the Temple of Jerusalem, the veil was rent from top to bottom. The earthquake ripped the veil open. And now God was loosed upon the land. All of a sudden, everybody could go in to the Holy of Holies. And God became not a God of just the Jewish people. God became a God of the world. God became a God of all creation. God became a God of all creation that we could all enter into. He didn't stop there. They took Him off the cross. And they buried Him. And they put Him in a tomb. And a rock covered the tomb. I love what Bishop John Shelby Spong says at this moment in his book, Resurrection, Myth or Reality. He says that the Jewish term of 3 days was really a Jewish custom, almost like a folklore. That when Jewish people said, and it was 3 days, they meant that something exciting was about to happen. There was a change of history about to take place. A major event was coming. They would just say, and in 3 days. And they knew that on the 3rd day, something powerful was going to happen. I don't know how long Jesus stayed in the grave, but the Jewish people would say it was 3 days, because they knew that history was going to change on that 3rd day. So on the 3rd day, that moment of changing history, that moment when the world changed on its axis, Mary Magdalene comes. It's a bright, shiny day. And Mary Magdalene comes to the tomb. Now, the scriptures are really confusing here, because Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Paul all write about the resurrection moment. And they all tell the story differently. None of them were there. None of them were there. But the one story they agree upon was that Mary Magdalene came. Some say that she came with Simone and another Mary. Some say it was just Mary Magdalene and other women. But on this Easter morning, it's Mary Magdalene. So she comes to the tomb. And when she gets there, she realizes that the stone has been rolled away. And the angel speaks to her.
Fear not, for I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. He is not there. He is risen.
What did you say, angel?
He is not here.
He's where?
He is risen.
Jesus is where?
He is risen.
He has risen. All of a sudden, the Pharisees were wrong. The Sadducees were wrong. There is life after death. There is something beyond this grave. And the joyous thing that happened in this moment, what happened here was that there is an encounter told in John that Mary Magdalene even sees Jesus. Now and you can argue if you want to. He could be in his physical body, he could be in his spirit body, he could be in his light body, I don't care. Pick a body. Whole denominations have split arguing over this. What body did Jesus have when he raised from the dead? Pick a body. Because that's not the important thing. Mary Magdalene saw Jesus, and they had a conversation. They recognized each other. They knew who they were, and Mary Magdalene knew in that moment that life was after death. That we do go on. That we do live after this life. Mary Magdalene knew. And the story says that Mary Magdalene, and I love it, that it was a woman at this well, at this tomb. I mean, we couldn't even make it to the inner court. I love it that it was a woman. Because Jesus was saying, as it was written in I believe it was Acts, at this moment in time, the consciousness shifted, because all of a sudden, there was no Jew, no Greek, no bond, no free, no male, no female. We were all one in Christ's consciousness. And this was the moment. This was the moment when Jesus, for this purpose I have come, brought forth the idea that there is life after death. And you know, Mary then went running to tell the other disciples. With joy, she went to tell the disciples that he was what? He has risen. Is he here, Angel?
He is not.
Where is he?
He has risen.
And he is risen indeed. It is not a coincidence that the angel who said at Jesus' birth, remember the story? Also sat at his tomb and has followed him his whole life. Because, my friends, we have an entire angelic kingdom at our disposal. We do. And so here we are. We're at this time. Mary has now told the disciples that he has risen. What do we do with the story now? How do we handle the fact that we too came for a mission and a purpose? Jesus of Nazareth had a mission and a purpose. He came to change the consciousness of the world. He came to say that when you've seen me, you've seen the Father. When you see me, you've seen the Father, and the Father and I are one. He came to say that God is everywhere equally present. Now, God did not suddenly become equally present, but our consciousness was raised to the place we could see God everywhere equally present. Jesus came to change the consciousness. Jesus came to do a paradigm shift of reality. That now we had the right and the opportunity to go straight to the throne of God. We had the opportunity. There was no one interceding for us. And we have the assurance of life after this one. Now, how do we come for a purpose such as this? What is our purpose as individuals? What is our purpose as a congregation? If you were raised in a home where everything was secretive, you hid truth, didn't tell anybody anything, kept your skeletons in your closet, lied about it, that's an old paradigm. You can come and you can change that. You can stand in your truth. You can speak your truth. You can, like Jesus, change the paradigm of your entire family by you standing up and telling the truth. If you were born into a family where there was emotional or verbal or even physical abuse, you can change that paradigm. You can change the energy of your family by standing in your truth, saying, no, I am one with God. I am not separated. I am an individual of the divine. You can change the paradigm. You see, Jesus wasn't the only one that came to change the world. Because Jesus said, all the things that I did, you can do. And you can do it better. We are change makers, my friend. The cross and the tomb are not symbols of salvation. They're symbols of our freedom. That God is everywhere equally present. That we can come individually to and know our own divinity. And that we can live multiple lives. That we go on. Because why? He is alive. He is alive. He is alive. Jesus came to change the world. He came to change the paradigm of consciousness in this world. You can call it salvation, you can call it anything you want. But just remember that when Jesus was here, from that cross, he unloosed the presence and the consciousness of God on the earth. And my question to you today is what consciousness you will let go. What consciousness will you free into this world? as we prepare for meditation. As Nancy comes, let us sit in the knowing. Let us sit in the knowledge that God is everywhere equally present. And that when you have seen the Father, you have seen me. That I and the Father are one. I have an individual relationship with the divine. And I live as He lives.